This is Broad Radio. For you, by you. Broad Radio. Here for more.
Good morning and welcome to Broad Radio on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm Jo Stanley and my beautiful co-host today, it's lots of beauty. It's brilliant, funny and beautiful Nelly Thomas.
Thank you very much. How are you, Jojo?
Oh, I'm really good.
Are you? Why?
Yes, because I've chosen to be. I know you hate that.
No, I don't.
Well, we've had conversations in the past where you're like, can you just let me be what I am right now?
I fight sad with more sad.
No, but I think a lot of the time you can wake up going, oh my gosh, I'm so tired and there's so much to do and life is really heavy and hard.
Yeah.
And I often feel that, but I meditate every morning. And today my meditation was on a visualization of a golden orb of energy.
Oh.
And I'm choosing to focus on that today.
On that.
Yeah.
Babe, whatever works. Do you know Sisyphus, the myth of Sisyphus, the Greek mythology?
Was this the dude who was pushing the boulder up the hill?
So you would, if you like memes, you would have seen he's been co-opted into the meme world many
poor
years
old
later.
Sisyphus.
And he just pushes this like rock, a
Yes.
boulder. He pushes a boulder up a hill and then down, and then he has to push it up again.
Yes, for eternity.
For eternity. And I do think there is a moment at the top of the hill, which is life, where you've just gone, this has been really hard. Do I sit here and reflect and be happy and focus on a golden orb? Or do I just focus on the fact that it's going to go down and back and I have to push it up again? So I think there is an element of choice in mood.
Yeah.
I just don't like the whole, you can think through any circumstances and be happy.
Oh no, toxic positivity.
Yeah.
I'm not here for that.
No.
I don't,
But looking on the bright side, go for it.
Yes, here we are. Well,
Yeah.
I love this Tuesday morning, and I love spending time with someone such as yourself. Now you're
in the moment,
and you are brilliant and funny, and I'm feel pretty grateful to be able to spend this hour with you.
Well, thank you for having me.
So we have an awesome show ahead, as always. We're going to be talking about career anxiety. We're going to be talking about this beautiful program, Community Refugee Sponsorship, which just, oh God, it's so full of compassion and love.
Doing stuff.
That's it.
I love that. Not just doing stuff.
And not going, I'm waiting for the government to make the changes I want to see. Sure, I will vote and I'll, make choices that way. But also as people, we can take action.
That's right.
Love it.
Yeah.
And also
can't
stand by.
Stop.
We're going to be joined by one of the stars of Wentworth, Jacquie Brennan, who...
Wentworth, people. Wentworth. Anyone who's watched this before, who's been with us on Broad, you know how much I love Wentworth. This goes back to the 70s.
When I saw, so this has come about from the fact that there's Wentworth Con happening in Melbourne this weekend, and I was like, we have to get a star from Wentworth on, and then I went, we've got Nelly on the show. She'll lose her mind.
Couldn't be more excited.
So yes, Jacquie Brennan is going to be joining us. As always, you can follow along and take part in the conversation. If you're watching live via Facebook or YouTube, we'd love it if you shared your comments or thoughts. Maybe you yourself are a Wentworth fan.
Who isn't?
I know.
Joe, maybe you can take that maybe out. You yourself are a Wentworth fan, and in all seriousness, I love the feedback, right?
Yes.
Because we sit here in a bubble, and it's amazing when you do get the feedback through Facebook or wherever else people can comment.
It's true. We would love it.
Show
if
us
you
the
did that.
love.
Yes, do, and share the love as well.
Or tell us off.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, conflict. People love conflict. But yes, also share the love if you are watching or if you catch up via our podcast, Broad Radio on the Go. We'd love it if you would share that, give it a rating. All of that sort of helps as we grow as well. So
rate and review.
Got to do like and subscribe. Before we move on, we do have to acknowledge, of course, that one of the biggest moments in history has taken place over last week sometime when Queen Elizabeth II passed. I don't really have much emotional connection with her or that particular event, I must say.
Do you know what? When it hit me is when I heard a commentator say the second Elizabethan era is over. And that I went, that's a very, that puts it in a far more historical context. in terms of thinking about the role of the monarchy, how long she reigned. It is incredible that, 70 years that she reigned for.
It is incredible.
Regardless of what you think of her reign, just the longevity. She's been through 2 world wars.
Yeah.
She's been through Trump. She's been through Boris Johnson. I mean, I don't mean been through. You know what I'm
Winston Churchill was one of her prime ministers. It's pretty.
I mean, just the breadth of history
Yes.
is quite phenomenal.
Also, for myself, I will acknowledge that I thought, well, what impact has she had on me? And I think subliminally, maybe there was the knowledge that one of the most powerful people in the world my entire life has been a woman. I think has had some impact. Very different if it had been a king, I think.
Look, you and I, I'm sure, are on the same page about this. It's such for me anyway, as a white Australian, it's such a conflicted moment.
Very much.
You know, because on the one hand, she's clearly a symbol of colonisation.
Yes.
On the other hand, she is clearly a long-standing female leader who's been well respected and who did modernise the monarchy to whatever extent one can modernise the monarchy. So I'm sort of torn between acknowledging her public service and then also acknowledging that as a symbol of colonisation, I mean, it's an understatement to say that's deeply problematic.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm really torn.
I mean, but they've acknowledged that themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
when Barbados became a republic last year, you know, Prince Charles was there and acknowledged the atrocities that had taken place under colonialism. So, as a an organisation, as a firm that the monarchy is, they have acknowledged that.
How much of their stuff they giving back, though?
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
One of the things I've found really difficult in certainly my social media feed, I've seen particularly, not just, but, you know, friends of colour, if that's even a description, sort of expressing sadness and rage and, you know, all the things, and then seeing other people come in and kind of go, oh, now's not the time. Now's not the time. Yeah, okay, but it's had a really different impact on people of colour. Like, it's a very different thing for me to sit here and kind of go, oh, Nana loved Princess Di,
Yes.
as opposed to, you know, my culture was decimated
And
by
I
the
just,
firm.
Exactly. And if now's not a time to acknowledge it, when is it?
Yeah.
I'm tired of people policing other people's response as well. That's
Yeah.
really tedious.
Yeah.
If you have a response, it's a valid response, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Some people are stupid. I mean, let's get that out there. But, you know, certainly I would say I think I've seen a lot of policing of people of colour, particularly, of whatever background, expressing sadness or about colonisation and then being jumped on. I think, like, read the room, white people.
Yes.
Read the bloody room. Like, back out of here.
I'd also like the opportunity, though, to take it away from the royal queen and acknowledging the grief that some people around the world, millions of people are feeling, and they're entitled to mourn. Although I did just read the term mourn porn, which is new for me. I love it.
God, is there anything that's not porn?
I know.
Is
But,
there
you know,
anything?
when you see, you know, the Today Show in their black and pearls out the front
yeah,
of Buckingham Palace, mourn porn, very over that. But,
Yeah.
you know, individually, if that's your response, you're entitled to it. But I'd like to move it away from the royal queen and acknowledge other queens who've achieved incredible things in the last week, one of which is the Aussie Rugby Sevens women team winning the World Cup over the weekend. They also, in this year, have won the Commonwealth Games gold and the World Series titles. So
Smashing it.
Oh my God.
And
Best in the world.
We're saying queens with a KW.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those queens.
Those
Absolutely. I mean, it can be a moment to reflect. One thing that I absolutely can connect with, you know, when you see people, and they really are genuinely deeply saddened by the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And I think some of it is we feel like, well, not just feel like, we are in incredibly tumultuous times. Like, democracy's in trouble, leaders keep changing, even in stable democracies. In the UK itself, the leader just got rolled. So she's been there for 70 years consistently. So it's like this idea of someone, you know, stable, solid, I know what I'm dealing with, even if you find her problematic, even if you're not a monarchist. I think for some people, they're surprised at their own grief. Some of it is another change. You know, another thing that's happening. The reason I brought that up is because I was going to say my queen's my nana.
Oh.
My queen is absolutely my nana is departed, Nana Gladys. She died at 96, the same age as the Queen. She had 12 kids. She had over 100 grandkids and great-grandkids and great-great-grandkids when she died. And she, oh my Lord, she loved Princess Diana. Like, think of how many kids she had and how many grandkids she had. There was one photo in her lounge room, Joe. One photo. Lady Di's wedding photo. So, can I name the elephant in the room and say, on behalf of Nana Gladys, she would be spewing that Camilla has ascended to the throne. Has she ascended to the throne?
She is going to be named Queen, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my view, but I'm just honouring Nana Gladys.
Sure.
She should be rolling in her grave
Poor
at
old
the
Gladys.
thought. Yes.
It's hard to accept that, times move on.
Yeah.
For poor old Gladys. I'm going to acknowledge Stephanie Gilmore, who's become an 8-time world champion in the women's champion surfing over the weekend as well. And my other queen is my daughter Willow, who last weekend received a footy award.
Oh, bless.
She is, let's say, she struggled to find her form, Nelly.
Yeah.
And on the morning,
But she gave it a good red hot go.
Mate, she brings the effort. And on the morning of this Best and Fairest award, she said to me, Mum, do you reckon I'm going to get an award today? And I said, I wouldn't think so, babe.
Yeah. Mother of the Year.
Got to manage expectations.
No, you do, you're right.
And lo and behold, she did get an award.
Bravo,
a coach's
Willow.
award for just, and I totally support the coach in doing it. It was him saying, you turn up every week, you are very coachable, you listen, you try the hardest you possibly can, and there you are, I see you.
Yes.
I burst into tears.
Oh, and can I say to all of that, when you hear people kind of going, oh, these days you just get awards for effort and da-da-da. What kind of person doesn't want to reward a child's effort?
That's right.
I am thrilled that Willow got an award for effort. Not all kids can be the best at everything.
No.
Why should they? Like in our day, she would have been ignored. That's the truth.
Yep. Anyway.
Bravo.
We're running very late now. We got distracted and I don't even care. Another queen. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We are thrilled to welcome. It's one of the stars of one of the best dramas this country has produced, a.k.a. Linda Smiles Miles on Wentworth, Jacquie Brennan. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, Jacquie.
I feel like I need to step back and let the love exude.
Well, let me just give you some background to my love, which is that I grew up in a little town in Western Australia. My mum was a bingo caller. And every Thursday night she would go and call bingo and I would sit with Dad with a pack of clinkers and watch Prisoner. And the memories of that, they are still with me. I didn't spend a lot of time with my dad, so it was one of those kind of moments. And also I think as a little girl, I knew how revolutionary it was on some level to see a show that was dominated by chicks.
Yes, and it took a long time for that to come back, didn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So when you got the role, because Linda's an absolute bitch, which
that's being harsh. She's just misunderstood.
Nah, she's
great,
complicated. Is she? Is that what we're calling her now?
Nobody's just one thing.
Aren't they? What's nice about Linda? Let's start there.
Well, if you go back to series 1,
yes.
So I don't know if you know, I was hired for 8 days.
Yes.
So
you were too good.
Linda wasn't really established, so I ended up being there for 8 years. So I was there from day 1 to the end. But Linda originally was a party girl.
Yep.
Organised all the social committees. It was just during the series that she started to spiral downwards.
It's true.
But she still had a moral code. I think she's just had a journey.
Yeah, that's true. You're quite right. And I remember seeing one of the Aunt Lydia. What's the actress that plays Aunt Lydia in Handmaid's Tale? It'll come to me later. Her saying the same thing. It's like you have to find the humanity in a character even that you don't like.
Yeah.
And I think there must be, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a certain joy in playing a bitch too.
Oh, there's got to be.
Absolutely. Everything's justified.
Yes.
I mean, they're prisoners for goodness sakes. So in Linda's mind, she's just disciplining.
Yes.
And I don't know who's seen it and who hasn't, but as time goes on, other factors come into play.
Yes.
But yeah, she was just doing a job, making sure that that they weren't breaking laws and that, everyone was safe from the pesky prisoners.
So Jackie, what do you do? What outstanding performance? Or how do you turn 8 days into 8 years?
Just keep a lot going on in the eyes, so they have to write stuff for me.
I love it.
I just, from my training, no matter how small a role is, I created a whole story for her. So even if I opened a door, and Nelly, you know how many doors I opened in the early series.
So many.
I was always coming from somewhere or going somewhere. And one of the writers came up to me and said, "We really like what you're doing, so we're going to start writing more for you." And we've decided she's going to have a gambling problem.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, yes. And also with a gambling problem and people needing favours, that means you're always going to have access to money from prisoners. So it just once that dropped, it gave me this whole other world. And I built a world for her where she'd been a teacher. Her gambling had got worse. She split up from her husband, and then ended up at Wentworth. So I think having any sort of a backstory makes it more interesting for everyone. And I think also having someone who was unlikable stood out a bit. All the other prison officers were friends with the prisoners, not old Linda.
No. Well, as you say, I think just by way of background for anyone listening and watching who hasn't seen Wentworth, Jackie plays Linda, who is a screw, aka running the joint. Like she's one of the prison officers, which in Wentworth land in the old series was very much frowned upon. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Jackie, even though I loved Prisoner, I love that the new series has been modernised, including your character. Like you said, you've given her a background, even though she does behave in, I think, very controlling, almost like she's a bully in lots of ways. But you have a sense of her background and you have a sense of how she got there. Same with Vera, same with Bea. In the original series, you just go psychopaths.
Yes.
In Wentworth, you go, okay, domestic violence background or drug and alcohol or loneliness. Like that's a real modern take.
And everybody has a story. That's what I find really interesting about drama in general. Is everybody has a reason for everything they do. There's either they're fighting against something or they're going with their influences. And when I auditioned for Wentworth, it was a reimagining of Prisoner. That's how they were terming it, a reimagining. And I was thinking, oh man, this is either going to go really, really well or really, really badly. Luckily for us, it went really, really well. But those scripts for 8 years,
good.
When I would get those scripts, I could not everything would stop and I just had to go from beginning to end and not just looking for what my character was doing, actually just the stories were so good.
I think that sense that everyone has a history and everyone has there's a reason for every action, that comes from a place of real compassion.
Yes.
That you have compassion for every single person, that there is even the worst, right?
Yes.
And do you think that comes perhaps also with that female ensemble cast? Because I don't feel like if you had a show about a male prison, you'd have that kind of empathy and compassion behind the characters and the stories.
I'm not so sure about that, especially these days. I think we're a lot more sensitive to male and female emotions on screen. But there is, I actually spoke to a guy who'd been a prison officer in a female prison as opposed to a male prison. And he said, I don't know if I'm segueing a bit, but in a male prison, if there's a problem, they'll punch it out and then it's done. In a female prison, if there's a problem, they can wait years to get back at each other.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
It's quite interesting, that nothing, it sounds like I'm really simplifying the male kind. But just the levels of that of revenge that women would go to he said it was really interesting, and he never felt safe. Whereas with the bloke, they just punch it out and you go, okay, that's done.
Well, and the subtlety of the revenge. You know, the
Yes.
kind of the emotional violence, you know, the
Yes.
fear. And that's where I think through Wentworth you really have that sense of, you know, fear. The character that Susie Porter plays, that I'd forgotten her character name.
Mari.
Mari, that was over years waiting to plot revenge for the death of her son. Literally
Yes.
years just waiting, just
Yes.
stalking.
And how dangerous is that? And,
So
and
dangerous.
as a viewer, you know,
Yeah.
you're so captivated just watching her
Just
weave
wait.
I mean,
this
has it made
revenge
you?
tale.
Has it made you feel deeply fearful of ever going to prison? Like, I feel like I watch those
Yes.
things. I'm like, I would not survive. In that
No, I
sort
don't
of
think I
environment.
would either.
We've got a comment here from one of our viewers saying Linda Miles had some of the best one-liners.
She did. Yeah.
She
Very
did have
witty.
some good one-liners.
Yeah, some good
Yes.
throwaways. Yep.
Was that
Yeah,
delicious for you?
It was absolutely delicious. I'm originally from a comedy background, so when I started seeing that they were giving Linda these beautiful, sarcastic, witty one-liners, I was like, yes, I know exactly how to play that. I suppose one of the most famous ones would be, well, there's a few, but one of the prisoners was pregnant and her friend said, oh, you know, Doreen wants ice cream. And Linda Miles said, I'll just call Mr. Whippy. You know, she always thought she was a bit above them. You know, they were just tiresome.
It's funny though. Like one of the most interesting characters, and I'm sure you've heard this, is Frankie. One of the reasons I find Frankie interesting is because in the 70s version of Prisoner, there was one out lesbian character. I mean,
Carol Burns.
the reality of that in a women's prison,
Yeah.
you know. But anyway, but she was, you know, lecherous and awful and predatory and, you know, all the homophobic stereotypes. We flash forward to Frankie, and I mean, even the straight girls in the prison are like, Frankie, please put me next to Frankie. Like, I'll work with her anytime. And even that kind of modernisation was really nice.
Yes. And that we have a very strong queer following. You know, I think the queer community has been very unrepresented on our television screens. So even though, you know, Frankie was in prison, it was so good to see, as you said, you know, the Frankie in Prisoner was so unlikable.
Awful.
Whereas this Frankie was just sassy and interesting.
And hot.
And hot. Go Nicole De Silva.
Yeah.
Yes.
But even in how she was played, not just in her physicality, you know, she was unapologetically herself.
Yes.
And that's hot.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
You know, Nicole has a massive following
Yeah.
all around the world.
Let's go to the fans, because you are, you know, just so loved as a series, but also you yourselves. And there's a Wentworth Con this weekend, but you've already done it in Chicago and New Jersey, and I believe you're off to Orlando at the end of the year. So what happens at Wentworth Con?
Well, I've just come back from the UK where that was a Screen Star event, which was huge. Wentworth Con is massive. So it originated in America. A girl called Kiana Clark has started it. And it's like a Comic Con. So it is a group of the actors from Wentworth. People buy tickets. There are panels, question and answer panels, merchandise, autographs. They go all day. So they go from 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. So we have one this weekend in Melbourne, which is my hometown. So I think there's 7 of us appearing. If anybody wants tickets, it's Wentworth Con /Melbourne. It'll be massive. And people are flying in from America and I think
people
from
are
the UK,
obsessed.
all around
Like,
the world.
You've got hardcore fans. Do you go dressed as Linda?
No.
You go as Jacquie, but do you get questions as Linda?
Yeah, not a lot of questions about Linda, definitely.
Do you have people dressed as Linda coming to say hello to you?
Yes, I do. And there's one girl in the UK who I met a couple of weeks ago who has a tattoo of Linda on her arm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wow. If I brought you a trifecta ticket, would that be triggering? Linda has a gambling problem.
I do think. So
we have a lot of research on gambling.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I don't have that gene at all, that gambling
Yeah.
gene.
We've got someone actually joining us, I believe, perhaps from the UK, Keely. She'd love a shout out from Smiles because she missed the con in Birmingham.
Oh, no. Is it Keely, did you say?
Keely. Keely.
Keely. Hi, Keely.
Ah.
I'm sorry I missed you in Birmingham. I did have a great time in Birmingham.
Can I ask one final very rude question that I'm really hoping you'll answer? Other than the fabulous Linda, who's your favourite character in Wentworth?
Probably the freak.
Oh, the freak.
The governor,
Joan.
played by Pamela Rabe.
Yes. Oh, it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
What a journey.
What a journey. Absolutely. Yeah.
She started off as a governor and then ended up in prison.
Yeah.
Being top dog.
Yeah.
Amazing. We do have to move on, but just finally, Jacquie, and this is from another listener, Phoebe, who's obviously a big fan. You gave us, I'll call Mr. Whippy, but she wants to know what is Jackie's favourite one-liner. What is your favourite one-liner from Smiles?
Well, probably Jamie Oliver. When Pam Rabe's character, the freak, is worried about the prisoners poisoning her, so she says, and I hand her some food, and she says, "Did the prisoners make this?" And Linda says, "No, Jamie Oliver."
And aren't I correct in saying that Linda's prone to saying, "All right, dickhead"?
That's pretty much
There's
the
a lot of
subtext.
dickheads.
I love that. All right,
That's pretty much the subtext for everything.
No worries, dickhead.
Jacquie, thank you so much. I know
Thank
that
you,
your fans are
Jacquie.
so excited to
Yes,
meet
me
you
included.
whenever you're out there. So, yeah, we're really pleased to have you on the show.
My absolute pleasure, and come to the con, anyone who hasn't bought a ticket yet.
Amazing.
Thanks, Jacquie, and congratulations on going from 8 hours to 8 years.
Yeah.
All power to
Thank you so much.
See you, love.
Thank you.
See ya.
Well, this is a first for me, Nelly, because I have interviewed some pretty amazing people, very famous people, but I have never interviewed one of my dearest friends from high school.
Is
but
it weird?
No, I'm thrilled because I
thrilled.
adore her.
Yeah.
She's one of my heroes. And today, not just as one of my friends is why we're interviewing her, she's the CEO of Community Refugee Sponsorship Australia. I'm so proud to call her my friend, Lisa Button. Hello, darling.
Hi, Joe. What a lovely introduction. Hi,
I
Nelly.
won't call you darling, Lisa, but hello.
You can if you want.
Oh, hello, Pet.
Hello, darling.
So community refugee sponsorship is just, it sounds to me like an incredible response to what I think most Australians have felt really angry about, which is Australia's government's response to refugees. Can you explain the program?
Yes, where to start? Well, look, I'll start by saying we didn't invent this idea. We've actually borrowed it from Canada, where it's been running really successfully at a huge scale for more than 40 years. And what it involves is groups of everyday Australians. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a competent adult in your own life, you get together a group of people who live near you. And you put your hands up to sponsor a refugee family. And what that means is you agree to be there for them from their very first day arriving in the country. You meet them at the airport and walk the journey with them for their first 12 months in the country, helping them with various practical things along the way. And some of those things are you have a financial component just in the first few weeks, like helping them set up their first house and providing them with temporary accommodation while they look for a house, and a little bit of income support just until they get onto Centrelink or they find employment, whichever happens first. But mostly it's about the practical support of, just orientating them into your community, helping kids enroll in school, helping people look for work and understand, what that looks like in Australia. So it's a very human thing, and it really taps into like the skills that we all have. It's just, competent people in our own lives.
Lisa, one of the things that I love most about what you've just said, but also the program in general, is not just the practical support, but the welcoming sort of emotional support that it provides for you to meet someone at the airport, for example. Because the reality, sadly, is we know that there is also pockets of our community that are really resistant to refugees. We do actually there is racism in that. I mean, let's just call it what it is. So I think those of us who don't believe that, need to counter it so that when refugee families, for example, do come across that, they know that it's not everybody. You know, that they know that they are welcomed by some Australians, hopefully most Australians. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that's so true. There's that welcome of, you know, it's not about government saying, here's your visa, you can come. It's actually about people there at the airport with, you know, a bunch of flowers and a warm hug saying, you know, welcome to Australia. We're here to welcome you and support you. But it's also, there's this ripple effect, which to me is one of the most exciting things about it. Like, I've got a friend who's been involved in, we ran a pilot program that started a few years ago, and she got involved, and she was quite, you know, passionate about supporting refugees. Her dad, not so much, but he became involved because he got drawn in through her involvement. He just wanted to get his toolkit out and assemble IKEA bunk beds. And he's become wonderful friends with the Afghan refugee who my friend and her group supported through the act of helping them build their IKEA furniture and using his ute on the weekend. You know, he just wanted to do something practical. And I can't imagine, he certainly wasn't racist to begin with, but racism thrives when people don't know each other as people.
Correct.
As soon as you have an opportunity to actually get to know someone as a human, I don't think very many people are, you know, inherently racist. They're afraid of the unknown, or they believe, you know, simple stereotypes about people they've not met. But yeah, this really breaks that down.
I think too, people generally, if they haven't taken the time to investigate what happens for someone who is a refugee normally, they wouldn't understand how little support there is.
Yeah.
You know, the stark difference. I think people have this assumption that, oh, if they come, then suddenly they're given all of this.
Someone from the government meets them
Oh,
with a
yeah,
bunch of flowers
and they get unemployment benefits, and
yeah.
suddenly they're getting the things that they don't deserve because they've, whatever, all this strange rhetoric that isn't based in fact. And now, hopefully, there's a different pathway that people can kind of see that, oh no, it's just a kindness that we're offering, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some, you know, we as a country have been settling refugees for a long time, and there are programs that are government funded that provide case management support for people when they arrive. But it's somebody behind a desk doing the very best they can, but, you know, providing support to dozens of individuals, and they can't get up and ride the bus with someone. They can't invite them over for a cup of tea on the weekend and just have a chat. Like, it's just not within the realm of possibility as a professional caseworker. So it's injecting that human element into it all. And we know, I guess, you know, we all know from our own experience, so much of the good stuff that we achieve in life, we achieve through the support of our networks, whether they be, you know, friends or family or professional networks. And when you arrive in a country for the first time, and a country that you haven't necessarily planned to migrate to, this is one of the misconceptions about refugees. Sometimes there's this Australian perception that there's, you know, millions of refugees in the world and they all want to come to Australia, and that they've, you know, they're hell-bent on getting here. The reality is most refugees, all they want is to go back to where they grew up and rebuild their lives. And that's not an option, obviously, for them. And so the second best option is to get an opportunity to rebuild your life in a safe new country. But, you know, they haven't necessarily been researching Australia and, you know, life in Australia and learning English for years and years and years, because they had planned to be living happily and peacefully in the country that they were from originally. So, you know, that need for support that any migrant needs is even more acute in the case of someone who is forced to come here by circumstances beyond their control.
Lisa, this is a bit left field, but try and go with me. One of the things I find really interesting about the sort of fascination with The Handmaid's Tale is that, to me, obviously it's a great, you know, feminist drama and based on feminist books. But to me, it's actually a story of refugees. It's a story of displacement, war, torture, escape, you know, the politics in the refugee movement. One of the things that I find interesting is that we watch something like that and think, well, if that was happening, you know, if June, who's the main character of The Handmaid's Tale, if she showed up in Australia, she could come and live with me and I would take her baby in and I would give her bunk beds and help assemble IKEA. But we seem to have a disconnect when it comes to the reality of refugees in it. Like, that is happening now, as you well know. So how do we make that connection become reality? The impulse to help is there if we are empathising. But why do we have this resistance to helping in reality, do you think?
I think it's because, well, part of the answer to that is because while Australia does welcome a certain number of refugees every year, and they're out, you know, in our communities, working in businesses, you know, doing their thing, people don't necessarily encounter them as refugees. And so the concept of a refugee is a phenomena. It doesn't have a human face for a lot of people. And, you know, shows like The Handmaid's Tale, it puts a human face on the phenomena and really sort of triggers that empathy. And I think one of the things that is so exciting about like what's happened in Canada, it's estimated now that 1 in 3 Canadians have come into contact with this program over there, a refugee sponsorship. And that means that 1 in 3 Canadians is either in touch with someone from a refugee background, knowingly knows them as a refugee, or you know, or knows someone who's closely in touch and is hearing those stories. And I think that's going to sort of have a ripple effect of not only empathy but just understanding. You know, what is it that's made you have to leave your home country, and what's it like to come to Australia in those circumstances? And overcome fears and misconceptions about people. And you know, one of the things I find interesting, having worked in the refugee space for a long time, is some people demonize refugees, others romanticize them. And at the end of the day, the only thing that refugees have in common with one another is the fact that they've been forced to flee their country owing to, you know, who they are or what they believe. And they are people across every possible spectrum of skill, personality, political belief. You know, they're a very diverse group of people. And the more that we can just understand them as just people trying to get on with their lives, you know, the more, I guess, empathetic and responsive we can be as a community.
Lisa, I was talking about this with Willow, my daughter, and just the emotional connection I had to the thought that I could be one of these groups of community. I began to cry because I just thought what we could do for a family who might arrive from Syria or whatever parts of the world they're coming from. You know, that just is incredibly emotional to me. But you've seen, we've had families arrive already. Can you tell us who you've met
and what happens?
Yes.
Oh goodness, where to start? It is really amazing. I mean, we've had the first few families arriving under what's now a government-supported program, and that's just been amazing. I was at the airport a couple of weeks ago in Sydney as 2 Syrian families arrived to be met by groups from Gosford and Goulburn. There's a regional New South Wales communities for those not familiar, and it was just so amazing to witness that. The groups had been talking to the refugees over, you know, WhatsApp and Zoom before they had even arrived in the country. So by the time the families arrived at the airport, you know, they were hugging each other like, you know, like old friends to some extent. They were sort of old and new at the same time. There was actually this beautiful tentative tenderness to the whole moment. It was, I might get a bit emotional when I think about it. But, you know, we've now heard from those groups about what those first couple of weeks have looked like. And, you know, one of the guys who was part of one of those family groups, he arrived with 4 job offers or job opportunities before he even landed in the country. Amazing. Because the group had been doing all this groundwork. And you know, there's other groups around the country who've solved the issue of housing by, you know, sending an email out to all the churches in their community and saying, you know, do any of you have any vacant church properties that you'd like to rent out, you know, to someone from a refugee background. One of the families had, they realised that the daughter of one of the groups realised that the daughter of the refugee family was celebrating her 6th birthday like 3 or 4 days after arriving in the country. So they organised this, birthday party for this little girl, and they found they went and looked in their own community for someone, a family with an Arabic-speaking background, so that not only would she have the support of their broader group, but kids her own age that she could speak to in her first language. And they had this beautiful little birthday party for her, which I think the family was incredibly touched by.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, I could bang on a bit more. I've actually had some people staying with me for the last week from Afghanistan, and had my own little personal taste of walking the talk of this, and it was just really lovely to just meet these people and share a little bit of their journey.
Just people to people.
I'd really, and look, when you, one of the things I'm really conscious about when we're talking to people, it can seem a bit overwhelming, the idea of sort of taking on that responsibility. But when you share it across a group of people that you're working with, that your friends, your neighbours, it's not that overwhelming, and you get so much out of it. And it's really quite instinctive, the type of support and work that you're providing.
I mean, the fact is, it's like if you had someone come and stay at your house, you would do all those things, right?
Yeah.
You would welcome them, you would feed them, you would make sure they have a warm bed, you would do all of those things. It's just that on a sort of a larger, more community scale, right? So it is instinctual to us, I think.
I think so, and especially for those of us, and I know you're one of them and I'm one of them, who's been so upset about the refugee debate in this country for at least a couple of decades, but you don't know what to do.
Yes, it's something so
like
practical.
You can give money to organisations, but to be able to go, I gave this little girl her 6th birthday party.
Yeah, amazing. So, Lise, to get involved, to form a community group, we want to go to which website?
Go to refugeesponsorship.org.au, and you'll find a page dedicated to the new CRISP program. That's the acronym is CRISP, which has all sorts of resources. We've got a public information session online tomorrow night, so you can register for that, or you can download various bits of material. You can watch a recorded information session if you can't make it tomorrow night. And I should just add something you said a minute ago, Joe. There's no expectation that you would have a refugee family staying in your house. There is an expectation that you would arrange temporary accommodation for the first few weeks before they can find a permanent housing. But how you solve that is really up to you and your group. It could be a granny flat, it could be an Airbnb, it could be a serviced apartment, whatever suits you. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I was using that as an analogy. Like if you welcomed
you
people
were
to your house. Yes, but no.
Some people do. But I just wanted to make sure people didn't think, I have to have a refugee family living with me for 12 months. That's not.
No, and that's a great clarification.
expectation.
But most definitely, if you've got a group of 5 to 10 people in your community, then accommodation is something that can be solved.
Absolutely. And you'd be surprised, people freak out about accommodation because we hear about the housing crisis all the time, and they go, oh my gosh, how am I going to solve that one? We had one group who went to the local real estate agent expecting to be told, shown the door, why would we do that? And instead they got this, oh my God, that's amazing what you're doing. How can we help? Should we put a banner across our website so that all of our landlords know that we're doing this? And people really do want to help. It's actually very cathartic for us all, I think, psychologically.
And if you're persuasive, the reality is a lot of the people listening to this show are resourceful and persuasive and actually can ring around and kind of go, this is what I need, can you help? And it's amazing what you can get.
And just finally, Absolutely. I'd say, Lise, this isn't about, like a handout sort of charity notion. This is contributing to Australia and who we are as a nation, what these people bring to our country.
Nation building.
That's it, isn't it? Like it's a joyful thing.
It is. It is so nation building, and it's restorative, I think, for all of us. So, I could bang on for hours about this,
but
the resourcefulness of people is absolutely phenomenal. And it's so satisfying. You know, when you solve one of those problems, you get a big kick out of it. You go, bang, I just, sorted that.
And it's actually doing something. You know, when you sit there and you despair about the war in Syria, you despair about Ukraine, like there's so many things in the news for us to be despairing about. Getting involved in something like this, you're like, I've helped somebody. You know, I didn't just like a post. I've helped somebody.
Well,
absolutely.
Lisa,
and if I could just...
Yes, go. Yep.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, yeah.
With the Albanese government, they've committed to implement this principle of additionality, which basically means that in the future, for every refugee family that gets sponsored, it means one more family gets the opportunity to come into Australia. So it does actually
really
expand the footprint.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That hasn't happened yet, but in a few months, I hope that will be implemented. So it really does make a difference to the global
Writing it
challenge
down.
as well.
Honestly, Lisa, and to blow smoke up your ass, that comes down to your very, very clever work as CEO of this organisation, because I know that there's a huge amount of work lobbying the government, working with the government to get this across the line in that way. You're very clever. Thank you so much for the work that you do. You're amazing.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Nelly. I really appreciate the opportunity to spread the word.
Awesome.
Well done to what you're doing. So proud of you, Joe.
Darling. Oh, love, I can't wait.
Nelly.
I can't wait for the next 50th. It's our 50th year.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh my God. We've had
Lots
some good times, haven't we, Dolls?
We have indeed.
Okay, take
All
care.
the best. Take care. Thanks so much.
Australia's harsh sun is proven to visibly age women by up to 20 years faster than those in the US. That's why you need sunscreen every day. Ask your Chemist Warehouse pharmacist which sunscreen is right for your skin.
Broad Radio. Talking inspo we love, info we need, and sharing more of us. Watch and listen live every Tuesday 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time at broadradio.com.au or find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn at Broad Radio Oz. Talk to us live. Call on 1300 8 Broad. Catch up on demand anytime, anywhere, every time, everywhere. On the train, we'll be here. 2 a.m. existential crisis, we've got you covered. Broad Radio. Here for more.
So, Nelly, you and I are of a certain generation as women, right?
Of a certain age.
Of a certain age.
Yes.
And as someone in that generation of a woman, I do consider it my great joy, but also duty to be role model and sort of make it easier for those women that come after us.
You don't pull the ladder up after you.
Absolutely. And I've kind of assumed, because I see around so many powerful women in their 20s and 30s who seem so much more together than I was then, and I go, oh, well, they are kind of working it out. They've got it together in a way I didn't, and we're in good hands. But perhaps that's not the case.
Yes, and I was one of those young women who presented like that but wasn't. So I'm always a little bit sceptical. You know, when the girl power movement and all that sort of stuff, I'm like, you can appear very confident and be, you know, paddling like a duck on the inside going, I'm not sure what I'm doing, not sure who I am.
Well, it seems like new research out of Monash University suggests that you could be correct. This study is called Young Women Choosing Careers, Who Decides? And it shows that young women in many instances don't have the optimism that we had hoped for them. And to tell us more, we're joined by lead author and senior research fellow at the School of Education, Culture and Society at Monash University. It's a very grand title, but well earned, I know. Dr Jo Gleeson. Good morning, Jo.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Nelly. It is a very long title, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to call you Dr. Jo, normal Joe, Dr. Jo.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Yes. So this study, very interesting.
Yeah, it's
it shows that women, we assumed at the moment, have more opportunities and freedom and feel like, yes, I've got all these choices ahead of me. Isn't that great? But that doesn't translate into a great deal of confidence.
No, not at all. Probably the most alarming statistic, I think, in the research is that nearly 60% of the young women, irrespective of their confidence, irrespective of their anxiety levels, which are incredibly high, I think the most startling statistic is 60% of them, and there's quite a few that were in this sample, 60% feel that they have fewer career choices. Their career choices are constrained because of who they are or where they come from.
Wow.
So there's some real baggage young women are carrying around.
One of the things, so I'm going to start with a pet peeve, if that's all right, because I think you might be able to answer it. And I've not been able to get an answer to this for years in interviews. And that is that it's often cited that young girls are doing better at school, you know, and there's almost there's a suggestion that boys are being left behind, that the education system's too tailored to girls. There's kind of an assumption that we should feel sorry for boys. My view is that young girls do better at school, then they do better at uni, then they still get paid less and don't get the jobs they want. Like, that's the rest of the story. So when you say young women have anxiety about their jobs, isn't that actually reality?
Yeah, so I'm with you. So my view is that, look, compared to a generation ago or a generation past, young women comparatively are doing much better at school. And there's more of them in school. There's more of them that are staying to year 12. There's more of them in higher education. But yeah, the story is that women, all the way through tertiary education, and whether that's into a training pathway or a graduate employment pathway, or it's an apprenticeship or whatever the pathway, young women, it takes them longer to find work that is related to their study or their training. It takes them longer to be full-time employed, and it takes them longer to get pay parity, if in fact they ever do, which we know that they don't. Women are also overrepresented in sectors like health, like hospitality, like service-type industries, and we know, hey, we've just seen it for the last 2.5 years, that women are far more vulnerable in the workplace than men.
And sorry, can I just follow up very quickly? Because the reason I asked that question is that when we hear young women have anxiety, I think sometimes we think it's irrational and we think they're worrying about nothing. Then you go, no, actually, if you do go into teaching, for example, you are going to be less likely to end up an AP or a principal if you're a girl. This fear is real.
Yep, this fear is real. And I think what's loud and clear in the research is that the young women, there's a lot of pressure on them, or they feel that there's a lot of pressure on them to choose certain pathways because they want to please others, because others have expectations of them. And that in and of itself is creating significant stress for them. So there's statistics that sit behind some of the outcomes that were presented in the report, that the young women just don't feel as if they have control of their own destiny. And that worries me greatly. That worries me greatly because it's starting in early high school, and we can only assume that that's being carried forward through other significant milestones. It's deeply concerning to me that young women feel that.
And I think the frustration too is that, in a way, I go, oh, well, our generation has failed then, right? Because they're feeling exactly the same way perhaps we did. But it's actually because we talk and talk and talk and talk. We're doing so much talking, but then nothing changes actually in action.
Or it's so slow.
Yeah. So I don't even know what can we do other than continue this incredibly snail-paced change. But they're kind of going, well, you're all talk. You're not making any difference for us.
Well, firstly, there isn't that much talk. As I'm going, Joe, I know that you're a mother.
I'm in a bubble of talk.
Yeah, Nelly, I'm not sure if you have children. I know myself. I'm a careers counsellor as well as a research fellow at Monash. So I do a lot of talking about this, right? And we think that parents are talking to their children. We think that schools are talking to their students, but actually they're not. So that's the first thing that needs to change, is that greater conversations about pathways and realistic pathways as well needs to happen. So we think that there's a lot of talk, but there's not. But secondly...
Can I interrupt for one thing before you get to your second point? Because I reckon that point is critical, and it's something we talked about in the intro. Like, I have a 15-year-old. I do public speaking classes at her high school, and the thing that I notice is that a lot of the girls, post-girl power, all the sass, the Lizzo, all that, they present as very confident, and you scratch the surface, or you're with them at 9 o'clock at night or whenever it is, and they are a ball of anxiety and indecision and fear and body image stuff and all the things. So I wonder if the reason the schools aren't having the conversation is because these girls seem fierce.
It could be. It could be. What, from a careers education point of view, what concerns me is they're still talking to the girls like they did in our generation. It's a 10-minute conversation in year 10 about what subjects you're going to select or what secondary school pathway that you're going to select. They then don't talk to you again until year 12. And in year 12, it's like, well, what university are you going to? Like, I've got some horrific stories of the lack of support or the assumptions that are made within careers education programs based on socioeconomic status about what information the girls will get and what they won't get.
And gendered. It's still gendered, consciously
Very
and unconsciously.
gendered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very gendered.
And sorry, I interrupted your second point. What was your second point?
Oh, probably
we lost
can't
it.
remember my second point now.
Who's got that kind of memory, Nelly? Oh my God.
No, the second point was really, look, careers education, you know, it's connected with what I just said then, is that the careers education advice and the structure of careers education within schools hasn't really changed over decades, and that needs to change. There needs to be broader ways of connecting, if nothing else, than connecting with parents and carers and helping to educate parents and carers about what are up-to-date information about tertiary pathways, about training and apprenticeship pathways, and about career opportunities. It's concerning that our young women are choosing careers in such a narrow band and not even considering other things that are out there. It is concerning.
Jo, can I be really selfish and bring it back to me?
Absolutely.
Career change.
No. We're at Broad Radio. I've been speaking with the National Association of Women in Construction, NAWIC. They're incredible, right? And one of the things, their challenges is to get education into schools and to girls to understand that construction and engineering is a career pathway, because it's still, that conversation is still not being had. But I kind of go, okay, we've always said 1,000 times, we all say you cannot be what you cannot see. Is that still valuable for us to show stories, to demonstrate situations in which women have come from every different background and done the thing? Is that still of value?
It is absolutely of value. But those conversations don't need to just happen with the young girls. They need to happen with their social networks as well. Like, there's so many stories where a girl might be inspired at school. Maybe an alumni student comes and speaks about the fact, you know, to roll with this scenario, the fact that they've got a great pathway in construction or in engineering, and she goes away inspired, and she goes home and she might talk about that with her parents, and her parents will sit there and go, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be on a construction site. No. You need to be a nurse, or you need to be a teacher. And that's where the anxiety and the lack of confidence and the second guessing comes, because that young woman had an idea that she was interested in and it got shot down. So, Jo, those stories are so important, but they need to happen beyond the school. They need to happen.
They need to be heard by our, because I agree. It's like these girls have, and the boys that I work with as well, they have this big red balloon of confidence and ideas and, hope. And then they go home and someone puts a needle in it, whereas if
Absolutely.
their parents have met, I've got a carpenter friend who's my age, late 40s. If they'd met Hillary and they can see that she runs her own business and she can determine her own hours and family flexibility and all that, maybe they'd be more encouraging of their daughter. But they're scared.
I think also that I'm learning that it's from women who might want to re-enter the workforce and do something completely different.
Yes.
It's that kind of broadening that scope for them as well.
Especially through COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to your point, Joe, again, that's why these stories are really important to tell. And we think they're happening, but they're not. And so we need to do far more in the space of having conversations at government levels. And to this point around construction, we're having some really fantastic discussions at the moment with Master Builders Association and with other associations, really trying to create some action in even though it's a small slice of a sector, which is construction and heavy capital industries, it's still an important place to start, I think, to demonstrate positive stories, to demonstrate that things can be done differently.
I love it. Well, congratulations on the study. I know that it goes much deeper into this research than what we've scratched the surface on today, but I really appreciate your time. Dr. Jo?
It's really important to have the research to back up the hunch. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really important in those conversations to be able to say, no, I can show you the proof. Because people, if they're stuck in their ways, they don't believe it.
Absolutely, Nellie.
Well done.
I guess that's why I do what I do. But thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Jo. And might I just say, just outstanding glasses.
I was like, you can't comment on a woman and how she looks. You can't. You can
at the end of it.
I love those glasses.
Oh, thanks. My kids think I look like Edna off The Incredibles.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, that's what I think. She's a stylish designer icon, so I'm very happy to own it.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Jo.
Love it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, now we've gone over time as always because I
well.
just love this so much.
Yeah,
but,
fun. We're just having these because my daughter's 15. It's like vet streams, VCE streams, career possibilities. You realise, like, it really taps into your own anxieties and fears. I think there's still a lot of parents who are really scared about vocational education and training and the options that presents. Like when when Dr. Jo said, designer, my daughter's interested in being designer, that's a vet stream.
Yes, yeah.
But for a middle class family, the anxiety.
It's so elitist, isn't it? It's so,
it really is.
So based in
it
this
really
absolute snobbery around.
It's class, mate.
It's terrible.
Class.
But where do you begin, right? Because my daughter's 13 and I've asked her many questions, right? What lights you up and what do you really feel? And the level of choice is overwhelming as well. So where do you begin with that conversation with your daughter?
I think I begin with her by going, what do you really like doing? And then we start talking about the practical stuff. In her case, and it might be the same with Willow as well, she's got health issues. So when we talked about fashion, for example, I'm like, we need to think about the practical reality of whether you can stand up all day. She can't stand up all day, so she can't cut patterns and things like that. Now, that's quite an extreme example with someone with an illness, but it'll be the same for kids in different ways. Can you concentrate that much if you want to be a game designer? Can you handle being around people that much if you want to be a teacher? What's your personality and likes?
Yes.
Start there.
But that's so interesting because Dr. Jo says that young women are limiting themselves because who they perceive themselves to be and where they come from. So that's a really subtle conversation, though.
It is a subtle, but I mean personality. Like, I'm a people person.
Right.
So if you say to me, let's look at all career options where you're around people a lot, I'm fine. Whereas I think we say to a lot of young girls who are not people, go into nursing, go into teaching. You go, that girl's going to be around people 12 hours a day and lose her mind. She'd be better off being an engineer where she has to consult with a couple of people a day at tops.
Yeah.
We've got gendered assumptions that all girls are sociable. They're not.
I can guarantee that's not the case.
Or if a young man doesn't have social skills, for the love of Jesus, don't send him to be a GP. You know what I mean? Like, actually start with who you are and build from there, I think.
Yeah, well, as always, a joy to have you.
So much fun, thank
this
you.
show. And we'll be back next Tuesday with Broad Radio. We'll see you then.